Hey everyone, today I want to introduce you to Pianist Collective. And technically this is the launch video, but from now on I'm planning to send this to literally every single potential student, potential member, because of how important all of this information is. It's even going to be a core part of the training as well. So let's just get right into it. So this is going to be a mastermind. In case you're even wondering what that is, I will explain it in the course of this video. And it allows both amateur and professional pianists to progress with the greatest speed, quality, and independence possible from sheet music, any genre. Typically, students will accomplish in 6 to 12 months what typically takes 3 to 5+ years. That's our baseline promise, really. I'll definitely go into what makes that possible. And if you're a serious adult amateur pianist, if you're a piano teacher, anybody that's looking to accomplish this, which is probably a lot of people, this is the place to be. This will train you to be a great strategist, the secret independent factor in learning speed, largely or entirely ignored by traditional training that focuses only on technique, musicality theory, scales, etc. We'll go into what that means in terms of strategy, why is it the secret independent factor and all that. Transforms your mindset from the ground up, unlocking the perspectives needed to get unstuck, reach the next level, and achieve seemingly impossible goals. We'll get into what we mean by mindset, what makes that possible. Of course, these are around methodologies and systems I've been developing for a very long time and not found anywhere else. Trains you to be as strong at giving critique as a piano teacher I would literally hire, because you're your own teacher every moment of your own practice time. Gives you the ability to perform for anyone, anywhere, anytime, under any circumstances. Doesn't matter what type of situation you're in. You can just sit down and play, really. Gives you an artistic outlet and excellent results, no matter how busy or unpredictable your work or life may be, because as we all know, adults can be very busy. There can be things happening all the time. Assembles an active community passionate about piano and about learning itself, where students can have questions answered through text, sheet music, video, anything you can think of, answer questions and discuss 24/7. Utilizes extensive collaboration so everyone advances faster and better together, where we're all learning from each other. And genuinely, I want to create a culture that's like hanging out with friends, where it's relaxed. You don't have to make friends if you don't want to, but you can. And of course, we're going to be generating real piano results. And in case you're worried about, well, what if I'm a total beginner? What if I'm too old? What if I don't have enough experience? None of that stuff matters. It's going to be focused around your specific goals and goal pieces, regardless of any of these things, when you join, all that. So you might be wondering also, why is this video so long? I could have made like a 20-30 minute video to explain. This is just from experience of even students reaching out to my lessons up to this point. People have questions like, how is this possible? How does it work? Why don't I just take regular, normal lessons? Why don't I just take all private lessons? How can you do this and that? And at this point, like, why is the collective stronger than private lessons, than group lessons? What about the piano app that I heard about, or these other piano communities I heard about? Oh, I've heard about something like this before. I'm here to tell you why that's not the case. So all of the information I'm going to share from experience, it has set students up for success. It's gotten them into the correct mindset. It has answered pretty much all their technical, logistical questions and things. It gets people excited about getting started, even if they don't know anything about me, even if they were originally only looking for private lessons. So I used to send like pre-recorded other videos. Often it would be at least a 90-minute phone call. So through doing this for the past few years, and especially recently, this is pretty much all the information I would give, all the old, all the new. And people are normally very happy with all this information. They get everything that they need, and then we get started as soon as possible. So this is going to be the main document we're going through. I know this looks pretty crazy, but I think it's a fair representation of how detailed I am as a teacher, what to expect out of the course that's going to be created, what to expect out of the level of collaboration, again, the level of attention to detail that we're going to go into. So in reverse order, these are the things that we're going to cover here. So I think I need to zoom in a bit here. So of course, in the end, we're going to end up talking about the collective. We're going to go into all these branches. Now, we're also going to be talking about some common pitfalls of adult students. We'll talk briefly about the instrument that I recommend, because sometimes people ask these things. Virtual lessons versus in-person lessons. We'll talk about how the goal piece and other related elements work. We'll talk about my strategic teams, which is actually the format I'm going to not teach anymore very shortly. But in order to understand how did we get from private lessons all the way to the collective, why are the results even stronger, this is necessary to go over for context. And we'll talk about my logical methodology and other methodologies. And of course, we'll talk about my studio history and trajectory from before the collective. So let's get right into it. So I'll keep this as brief as possible. So I taught for over 20 years from the age of 13, bachelor's in music education from NYU, master's in piano performance from Manhattan School of Music. I've got some other credentials here in case you're bored and you want to look at, Steinway top teacher, Thumbtack, top pro, Steinway educational partner. I performed at these places. I performed at these other things. I realized I was uninterested in going on to a doctorate, as I didn't want anyone to control my practice or research. I did feel instinctively I'd be able to accomplish way more on my own, and I had the talent of hard work, so to speak. I would sometimes practice 6 to 8 hours a day, sometimes 8 to 10 hours a day on my own. After I'd finished my master's degree, I was able to practice sometimes on the upper end of that once that was finished. And I just wanted to dedicate myself to the craft and to the piano while I had time, while I was young. I'm still youngish now, but especially then. And I became obsessed with figuring out how to learn pieces as rapidly as possible with the best quality possible, and with letting students do the same, as well as helping them to develop true independence as rapidly as possible so they're not so dependent on the teacher. Anything I tried on myself, I would try on all of my students, all ages, abilities, and experience levels from 3 years old to 80 plus years old. Anything I tried on my students, I would try on myself. And I relentlessly iterated through different versions of my unique methodologies for over 15 years. I think longer than that now. I think it's over 17 years now from when I was 17. Learned, memorized, and uploaded 100 pieces to YouTube in 2016. Did the same with 150 in 2017. If you search David Chang 100-piece challenge, 150-piece challenge on YouTube, you will find them. And uploaded tons of projects to Instagram and Facebook in the years that followed, including memorizing the complete Chopin etudes in the latter half of 2020. Actually coming back to those now. Not all of them are great, but I'll be studying them for a lifetime, like everybody else. I was an employee at a piano school for quite some time during all this time. And in fall of 2018, when I started my private studio, I was fortunate to become one of the most in demand in New York in about a month. So that was pretty surprising. I was able to quit my job at the piano school immediately after. All my spots were filled very quickly, and I started a waiting list. So everything was full. Then I became specialized more and more in teaching adult students. Was fortunate to become in demand nationally 3 or 4 weeks after the pandemic started. Once I started offering virtual lessons, waiting lists quickly turned into interviews. Then I invested heavily in business mindset related things at the end of 2021. I was still teaching too many students despite the selectivity. And then I started the strategic teams, highest level group lesson program that exists that I'm aware of, with both collaborative and independent components. At the beginning of last year, 2022, it was a great success. And I also started hiring other top-notch teachers, faculty, just a very small number that have done some of these things. They've taught at NYU, SUNY New Paltz, Mannes, the New School. I've trained them in my unique learning methodologies as well. They have master's degrees or doctorates in piano. They performed internationally. So we started going off into some new directions. So now in terms of my methodologies as a whole, I think this will partially help to explain how some of those results are possible. We'll start to get into it. So as you might know already, I'm basically a specialist in strategy and mindset. Strategy, largely, I'm talking about the methodologies, like the super specific nitty-gritty instructions that I'll talk about in a bit. Mindset is kind of even deeper than that. It starts to go into our beliefs and thought systems and so on. I'm sure I'll expand on this a lot during the course of this video. Now, traditional teachers, even really good ones, tend to focus on the musical and the technical and just focus on those. Musicality can include how different your louds and softs are, playing one hand louder than the other hand, gradually getting louder and softer, really clearly playing with a beautiful sound. All this is really important. And technique, how to create those sounds, how to move healthily, how to play super fast passages super accurately, how to play super difficult pieces, etc. And there could be, of course, music theory, history, inspirational context, and all that. But the actual nitty-gritty moment-to-moment decision-making in your own practicing, the exact things that you do when you practice, nobody really seems to care about. Or if they do, they don't seem to care nearly enough. And even in conservatory, after the professor gives you a high-level comment, it's your business what you actually do in the practice room. If they say, oh, David, you should release your wrist this way, or you should watch your alignment, you should voice the top of this chord, make it louder than the other notes of the chord, watch your pedaling, keep your fingers very close to the keys, all these types of comments. That's fine, but then when I'm actually in the practice room, I have to figure out, oh, should I do this slow? Should I do it fast? How many times should I do it? How often should I do it? Right? So the exact decisions they're not really concerned with. And different people have different amounts of talent in how to practice itself, and it really is not addressed even at the highest levels of traditional education. Anyway, so if most people gather that if you have a 3-page piece of music, you don't want to just play all 3 pages from beginning to end over and over again. First of all, you'll be playing through large areas of the music for no reason. Second, by mindlessly playing through all 3 pages, you start to play more of the piece with just muscle memory rather than any awareness. Creates a lot of risk for future memory slips, and you're spending a lot of time avoiding the areas that actually need the most work. So instead of playing through all 3 pages, you can isolate the page that'd be most useful to practice on its own. And if the page, why not the line? If the line, why not the measure? And why not the fraction of a measure from there? What's the best possible decision you can possibly make right now to advance your progress and save you tons of time while cultivating awareness and memory? How do I always know the best possible decision I can make? And that, in simple terms, is what my logical methodology teaches. So that's one way. Another way of looking at the logical methodology, I think of as 2 umbrellas of things, my career representation of umbrellas, and the layering of strategy. So the first umbrella I think of as general learning research. And you might have heard me recommend in my YouTube videos and so on. Make It Stick is a great book to get started in all of this, so you should get that. Again, Make It Stick. It's this little blue book. It's a great book. So 2 examples quickly. Spaced repetition. We have to forget and relearn things a certain number of times before they enter our long-term memory. So this is in contrast to mass repetition, where you just do something over and over again, often mindlessly. Repeating a fact to yourself over and over again, that doesn't make any sense to remember, in terms of long-term memory. So that's the same with coordinations as well. And the effort of retrieving the information from somewhere in our brains / coordinations, that cognitive effort, that is what causes things to enter the long-term memory. And when you learn a new passage, you want to purposely forget and relearn multiple times. So it's really like a win-win situation, because if you forget it, you think, oh, this is actually beneficial for memory because I need to forget and then relearn a certain number of times before it enters the long-term memory. And then if you remember it, of course, it's even better because that's your actual eventual goal. So it's an oversimplification, but if you can forget and relearn 7 to 10 times within one day, it can be like getting a whole week's worth of practice in one day. Now, the second umbrella, concepts specific to music and to piano practice, we can talk about briefly an overlapping note and adding in reverse. So for overlapping note, people tend to stop at the ends of pages, lines, sections, etc. And instead, you always want to include the first note or chord of the following page, line, section. This will create a point of overlap that helps greatly with transitions. So instead of playing that page and then hesitating before the next one, line, then hesitating before the next one, practice a line and then the next chord as well. Practice a page and then the next chord as well. That'll help a lot with those transitions. And we have this idea of adding in reverse. If you're like, this is just a made up percentage, but 98% of people, almost everybody, if I ask you to practice from first beat of measure 1 to first beat of measure 5, you'll probably play that section over and over again until you get it correct. Then you'll think I finally got it, and then move on to the next section. In the process, maybe you played the beginning of the passage correctly 40 times, and maybe you played the ending incorrectly like 35 or 36 times, and then correct 4 or 5 times. So you've played it correctly a very small percentage of the time. And then again, people wonder why the ends of sections are so weak. Why are there so many spotty points in my memory? So instead, in terms of adding in reverse, what you want to do is go to the very end. You can play like middle of measure 4 to the beginning of measure 5, or the beginning of 4 to the beginning of 5 afterwards, then middle of 3 to the beginning of 5, beginning of 3 to the beginning of 5. So you're making your way gradually back to the beginning. Each one increases the chance of success of the next. And this way we don't have this bias towards the beginnings of everything. That's the problem with an art moving forward in time. Like if you have 50 flashcards, the first 30 go well and the last 20 don't go well, surely you would not go back to the top of the stack of flashcards again, right? But that's exactly what people do with music because they feel better about starting from the beginnings of things. So instead, go to the ends, the neglected portions. Ironically, even if the more difficult part is in the beginning, you think like, oh, let me practice the beginning and fix that difficult part, you're still going to neglect the endings because of our bias towards beginnings. So very important concept. And I want to talk a little bit about traditionalists versus progressives versus me in terms of all these things under the umbrellas. So again, or not again, but in general, there are way more concepts under both umbrellas than these. These are just super quick examples. So traditionalists, they're not aware really of any of these things. This is a generalization, of course, but how the brain works, what the best practice strategies are, etc. And progressives, they may know some of these things, but it's at a very surfacey level. You might often hear 10 tips and tricks for learning piano fast, tips for adult learners on YouTube. You might hear, try spaced repetition over here. Try separate hands if that part's too hard. Try playing slowly over here. Try adding in reverse over there. But really what we do instead of that is the layering of strategy. We layer dozens or even hundreds of strategies and mindsets on top of each other as different layers because it's not like one thing stopped working when you were doing the other thing. All these things are independently helpful. Why would you not use all of these independently helpful things together if there's a way to keep track of them all without getting overwhelmed? And that is what my methodologies allow us to do. They are complete systems of logical problem solving that incorporate all these layers seamlessly when implemented correctly. And in terms of the completeness and specificity of my methodologies, I have no direct competitors. Partially it's because we have a notational system to keep track of our work within the methodology. It's what allows for the elegant layering of strategy like I described, the ability to execute the best possible decisions for quality progress at all times. And I want to say that studying strategy is a far faster payoff than traditional methods like music theory because a decision you make now can immediately impact your progress. And there's no downside to studying strategy, which with traditional means is, of course, how long they take before they can be implemented super effectively. So it's better for both short-term and long-term progress because by learning how to think and how to learn, you will assimilate traditional components far faster as well, right? So in terms of the short-term progress, you're able to progress faster right away because of this very specific decision that you made, the best possible decision that you could make. And for the long term, the how to think, how to learn, that's going to pay off, of course, many-fold, and that'll compound over time. So very briefly, if I can just show a quick example over here, right? So this is an example of my logical methodology and how specific we can go with some of the notational system. So here we're actually indicating like eighths of a measure, halves of a measure, and so on. You can see that even in going through this area, we're breaking this down even smaller. So for instance, in this area over here, where I don't have any markings, I might ask the student, hey, in order to play from here to here correctly, this eighth of a measure or so, I call it an eighth measure set because we include the following vertical here as well. We include the section, an eighth of a measure plus the following chord. we're going to do the last 16th of the measure, right hand alone, left hand alone, and then both hands. And then we will try the entire eighth measure set, eighth measure plus the following chord, right hand alone, left hand alone, and then both. It's sort of like a 6-step process, and that will allow us to play this eighth of a measure plus the following chord correctly. And believe it or not, this is extremely surface level compared to how deep we can go in terms of strategic thinking, ultra-specific decisions. It's definitely not just these 6 steps that we talked about. There's so much more that goes into the layering of strategy if we can just get deep into the study. So anyway, so just a quick little example there. Now, just for context at this point, because I know that I've kind of explained a bunch of things already, all of this will help to explain why is it that the collective is the strongest format that we can possibly use for learning my logical methodology and other methodologies, for achieving the incredible results that I talked about at the beginning of this video. All of this will make that much easier to understand. And I think that's an important part of teaching and communication as well, too. We need to have some context, reasoning, things that are supported by logic and science and research. So if I just describe the features of the collective, you're going to have this, you're going to have this, and through this, you're going to be able to achieve this result. Even with reviews, even with other student results and so on, it might still be a difficult leap to make because it is out there. It is very, very, very different from normal lessons. So from experience, again, just through working with so many students, I think that all this information will make that much easier to grasp, much more approachable. And if I'm repeating myself already, it's because from the research, repetition is excellent for learning. So I'm trying to do some spaced repetition even throughout this video. So hopefully it will sink in and it will make sense to you, just like if we had a normal conversation live, right? So anyway, I'm going to talk briefly now in terms of these strategic teams. So let's see here. Try to go through this quickly. So I'm soon going to be retiring from this format completely. I still think it's helpful to explain it. It'll help you to transition. It was like an evolution from private lessons to strategic teams to mastermind. This was the middle step between the two. It is honestly a fantastic format. Like, I love my job now. The results are amazing. The students are very happy. The reviews are great. I just saw that there was something even beyond this. Honestly, though, the leap, if I just explain directly from private to mastermind, it is such a large gap that it wouldn't even really make sense. So I think that this will help us to grasp that difference, that transition all the way. So what private was lacking compared to the strategic teams, so what, just kind of normal private lessons. So one is the really rapid gaining of independence from the teacher. Even very advanced students aren't immune from this. We actually need some desirable difficulty and independent practice in order to gain independence even more rapidly. Like, even really high level students that are going to school for music, going to college, bachelor's, master's degree in music, a lot of the time they're still dependent on the teacher when you account for how high of a level they are. So it might be some very fancy musical, technical concept, but because they're only getting real-time instruction from the teacher, they're dependent on their weekly lesson in order to tackle new pieces and apply the same concepts to the new pieces. So we actually want them to, even the really high-level students, to do independent practice that the teacher can then assess. And I'll kind of go into this, I think, a little bit more as we get to the other side of this little map here. So anyway, and we also, it would be great if we had more performance opportunities, even within private, even within these regular lessons, because in conservatory, people can visit friends, they can perform for each other in the practice rooms, they're surrounded by other people similar to them. We don't really have many opportunities to perform for others, especially other pianists in private lessons. There should be opportunity year-round. More on the benefits of performance later on. Collaboration in the strategic team. So anyway, I mean, in this part, once the team started, we had way more independent practice, which would result in this rapid gaining of independence, and we had way more outperformance opportunities as well too. So one thing that's happening within collaboration within the teams is performance. You could perform every session if you wanted to. So there's much more performance than in private lessons you can perform for the other people that are on your team. And typically there were like up to 5 or 6 people per team. In terms of critique, there could be critique from me, from other students. There could be discussion. There could be lecture. There could be pedagogy training in terms of teaching. I've had cases where I trained a parent of a student to be as strong as a real piano teacher. My students have included piano teachers and other professional musicians. I want students to become as strong at teaching as a teacher I'd literally hire, like I said in the beginning of the video, because you're your own teacher every moment of your own practice time. And we'll talk more about the benefits of teaching training a little bit later on. So that's under the collaborative component. Much more opportunity for performance, critique, and all of that. Sometimes there would be a little bit more discussion amongst students and so on. Sometimes I would give more comments. And then we have the independent component in the teams. And this is really one of the best examples of desirable difficulty. So when total beginners join, instead of sitting next to them and teaching them how to read music and play simple pieces, I just ask them to get some resources and then leave them completely on their own. I don't even help them, which sounds crazy, but it has worked really, really well. And the actual instructions for students, with some variations, are do these theory pages, buy this adult beginner book and teach yourself simple pieces from it, watch the rest of these videos, because I would send them some pre-recorded videos, which is really what all of this is. Prepare anything to play for me and send me music from it if they weren't total beginners and they could already play something. And generate an unfiltered list of goal pieces, any pieces that you want to play, what are your dream pieces and all that. So it really is like a diagnostic test. A diagnostic test and tests in general reveal all of the students' strengths and weaknesses in a moment. And leaving students on their own functions as testing. A math teacher wouldn't say all the answers in your ear when you're taking a math test. That'd ruin the entire point of the test probably. So we don't want to underestimate what students, particularly adults in this case, can do on their own. Every single time that you check on the student, you learn everything that the student can do completely on their own, everything that they need help with. When you allow people to make mistakes and fail, and then fill in the gaps also, the research has consistently shown that they'll remember this better than if you just helped them or gave them the answers directly, right? So if someone's learning river flows in that has black keys as well too, I often won't explain to them key signatures, so they'll play it only with white keys, which results in some wrong notes, of course. But then after they play them wrong, I'll then teach them how to read the key signature and account for the black keys at that time. That'll result in the correct notes. And they'll remember how to play river flows in U, and they'll remember how to read key signatures, which tells them how to play the black notes. They'll remember that way better than if I just directly shown them and given them the answers, because they were allowed to make mistakes first, really. So anyway, and like I said earlier, we want to be constantly giving these diagnostic tests, all the tests, so that we can always learn what the student's strengths and weaknesses are at any given moment. So really, like for these some of them total beginners, when you allow them the chance to do this, some of them would come in and they've already taught themselves to read music. They've already taught themselves simple pieces. If people are just given the chance, they really can do way more than you might have guessed. And if they can't do something on their own, then we fill in the gaps, and it creates a much, much stronger result. So checking in on the student's independent practice is also akin to it's an accurate window to what will happen during the rest of the week. So if you ask them to learn 4 new measures a particular way, check in on them to find that they're helpless. Obviously, they'll be helpless the rest of the week on their own as well. If you teach them that strategy, though, you give helpful and relevant comments. You ask them to learn 4 new measures a particular way. You find that they were able to learn those measures independently. They've now gained the power to teach themselves measures of that difficulty during every moment of their own practice time. And those results will be then amplified manyfold during the entire rest of the week. So very powerful. So ironically, we are trying to train the strongest self-learners, but they will always continue to get value out of the long-term lessons, hopefully if the teacher is good enough. And because the lessons are based on strategy and mindset, there will always be more ways to increase efficiency and effectiveness of practice along both traditional and progressive routes. We want to make obsolete what's happening in the lesson as soon as possible. In the beginning, you might think, oh, David gives really specific directions, so I just want to show up so you can give me those hyper-specific directions. I don't want to do that. I want to stop doing that as soon as possible, solving problems of that difficulty for you, because I want to give you the power to predict every decision I would make. That would make me giving specific decisions or directions of that type totally unnecessary, obsolete at that point. Now you've gained the power to every day achieve on your own the value of what the lesson originally was. And now that that's been delegated to you, that'll free me up to teach you higher level technique, musicality, strategy, and the process will begin all over again. At some point, the new thing I'm teaching will also become obsolete when the student takes it over. So you kind of see how that works. The more we can delegate to you, the more higher level things I can then teach you, right? You graduate, like you don't want to just be me, you don't want it to be me fixing notes for you forever, right? That's like a really basic thing. But then the higher level stuff you learn, you can graduate from that as well too. That's what allows for extremely rapid acquisition of independence. So you can see that in terms of the logical methodology, this stuff's really powerful, but all this rapid acquisition of independence stuff, it is just as important a component, if not more. So a typical session, most of the session is independent practice on your own individual pieces. I'll usually ask who'd like to perform, who'd like to listen and everything at some point in the middle. You can decide if you want to participate or if you'd rather just practice on your own. And that's how you can work on individual pieces and goals and have individual experiences within each session as well too. So you can basically decide, do you want to listen, do you want to perform, or do you want to just continue practicing on your own? In terms of the actual logistics, like I said earlier, typically there'll be up to 5 or 6 people per team. If there were 2 or 3 students, I treat them as if there were more students because we want them to develop just as much independence. And for in-person students, I have 3 high-end keyboards, baby grand piano in my studio. Every keyboard has 2 pairs of headphones. I put on the other pair of headphones to listen to a student without disturbing the others. For virtual students, put them in breakout rooms, and I would put one of me in each room as well too. And the devices are like silent windows, kind of like virtual headphones. And the real me can then travel from room to room, my phone, like virtually putting on the other pair of headphones. So that's how it would work in terms of logistics. And again, this is a fantastic format that I love teaching, but I saw opportunity for something beyond this. And so it'll make more sense when I explain in terms of what the collective has become, or what my vision for the collective became as a result of that. So now we're going to go into the goal piece and other elements. So if a total beginner reaches out to a normal teacher, be very normal for them to go through adult beginner books, page by page, for 2 or 3 years before starting a piece like Fear Release, their goal piece. And the quality probably will be low because of the level of the teacher. Now, if they study with a top caliber traditional teacher, again, this is a generalization, but it's very possible they'd be put through a more intensive regimen of scales, arpeggios, music theory, finger exercises, etc. They may be stricter, more demanding. They may ask for a certain amount of practice per day, but it'll be accelerated. They may start a piece like Fear Release after 8 or 9 months, a year, if it's within the teacher's agenda, if they let them and stuff overall. If that total beginner reached out to me, I would teach them how to teach themselves to read music within the first 2 lessons, at least the basics, and we begin working on Fear Release or whatever it is by the 3rd lesson, whatever the goal piece is. This is made possible by all of the methodologies, strategies, and thinkings that I described earlier. And results aren't identical for everyone. I mean, hard work matters, the amount of thinking and reflecting someone does matters, the amount they pay attention to lessons matters. Talent matters too, but although not as much as a lot of people think. So even if they didn't learn super quickly, took them a whole year to learn Fear Release, it's still a piece they wouldn't even normally have started for over 3 years. Not to mention the quality with which they'd be playing and studying Fear Release by studying with me, playing and performing Fear Release rather. So that's the reason for our baseline claim, right? To do in 6 months or a year what would have taken the 3 to 5 years otherwise. Now, often I'm asked, what about the traditional elements? So going through this briefly, students often assume they must do these things in order to play the piece that they want to play, the scales, music theory, etc., teachers often assume this as well. They assume they have to build the foundation before they can work on the music they want to play. Now, I'm able to build the foundation, acquiring technique, musicality, etc., through doing the actual thing itself. We do the goal piece itself. We acquire those so-called basics because of the unique methods. So like we acquire musicality through working on the actual piece. We acquire technique and coordination through working on the actual piece. We learn theory through working on the piece as it arises. And as I mentioned before a little bit, and as I'll say below, I don't even consider technique to be the true foundation that we're seeking. The true foundation that will support all other learning is actually learning how to learn, think, and solve problems. Like there's really, if you know how to learn and how to think, how important is that when you encounter information, right? I'm like, if I don't know how to learn how to think, all the information that the world can come at me, the theory, the scales, it's just going to go in and out of my system and have no meaning. But if I know how to do these things, I'm going to be able to absorb that so quickly, right? So anyway, now that there's a way to, just go for the goal in a straight line, just go for it instead of wasting time doing other things. In the process, you'll acquire technique, musicality, coordination, etc., much faster than you would have originally anyway. And that's because the level of technique and musicality in the goal piece is at a much higher level than the simple pieces you would have originally studied in the beginner books. And you'll also acquire way more knowledge about how to practice, how the brain works along the way, both the progressive elements and elements that are uniquely specific to my teaching. So typically we begin by focusing the entirety of our efforts on the goal piece. Usually after a year and a half in the past, that's when I start to go back to more traditional elements. Because students would now be so much more coordinated, because they now understand how to learn, how to think so much better, they would then rapidly learn traditional concepts such as theory and scales much faster, just like I was saying earlier, than they would have had they followed traditional progression. And that'd be on top of the higher level of technique and musicality that they would have had from studying the goal piece, right? Because the goal piece is so much harder, there was a higher level of technique and musicality that resulted. Traditional elements are essentially enormous chunking mechanisms. They're definitely useful, but it's much longer before there's a practical payoff. So from a top-level strategic standpoint, often the optimal time for a student to learn a lot of theory and so on is not at the very, very beginning of their journey because they don't know how to learn how to think yet. Their brains are not optimized. It's often not the thing the student's most motivated to do. It'll also just take quite a bit longer before that practicality emerges. You won't be able to immediately say, that's a G dominant seventh chord. That's E major first inversion. Like that'll take some years probably before that happens immediately. So, and then a separate point, within the collective, we will have an even better options open to us now in terms of traditional elements. So our focus will still typically be entirely on the goal piece as a student gets started. But now a student will be able to learn about traditional elements and other concepts in my ever-growing course on their own time. So I'm going to talk more about the course in a little bit. The lectures that I give in the course will be as if you were in private lessons with me and I had unlimited time to explain things. So I'll say right now, the course is going to be a big one. I originally naively thought that maybe I'll just have the whole thing complete before this launches. It's going to be more like more content is released over time. That's what I mean by this ever-growing. But part 2 of the course, it is going to be focused on these traditional elements. So, like I said, it'd be as if I had unlimited time to explain them. I can refer you to the appropriate course modules when needed and relevant, like the one on triads or the one on scales eventually, once those are created. There no longer will have be a need for a trade-off between working on pieces and working on theory during live session time. This lends itself very well to lecture. So, and then also you'll be able to engage with the music theory material, ask questions, apply the material specifically within the context of your pieces and so on within the community. And this will all make more sense once I can explain how the collective functions and everything more in detail. So this is way better for learning rather than theory existing in a vacuum. People won't really remember concepts for the long term unless they use the information in real life situations. So theory can't really remain just as theory. So in case you forgot that we're still going over the collective really ultimately, this is what I'm going to be talking about in part 2 of the course: music theory, musicality, musicianship, So something that I'm in the middle of creating and planning now, I'm going to be continuing to create it after the collective launches. So this is possibly going to be the biggest part of the course. Instead of me explaining, live what are intervals, what are triads, I give the same explanation every single time. So instead, there will be a lot of modules explaining all this stuff. And many times when students learn, for instance, what are scales, how do scales work, how do chords work, and so on, it is just in and out of your brain so quickly. And part of my vision with the course is that there are going to be action items and things too. So for instance, let's say that you learn something like intervals. What are thirds? What are sixths? Or something like that, right? So when you learn that, there will be action items as well too. It may be find thirds in your piece, right? Circle the thirds inside of your piece and then upload them to the community. And we can see if you're finding those correctly. I might tell you within a live session or something like that, go to the course, go to this specific module, watch it, and then complete this assignment. And with new pieces, as you advance from beginner to intermediate to advanced, etc., you can go through that same material again. That's what's going to cause things to enter the long-term memory, because the research also shows you've got to care about this material and engage with it. So traditional theory, it's sort of isolated from your goal pieces, but here it's going to be inexorably intertwined. So if in your beginner piece you were finding intervals, and then your intermediate piece, you're then finding intervals again, that's going to really enter your long-term memory. You're never going to forget that information because of the way that you're engaging with it. And you can get feedback outside of the sessions and everything. So anyway, so just a little preview of what I'm going to be talking about more in detail in a little bit, but hopefully that makes some sense. You'll be able to access that information anytime, obviously 24/7 because it's pre-recorded. It'll be in a specific order. This course, as you can see, it's planned to be 50 plus hours. I honestly have no idea how long it will end up. This is a conservative estimate. I will say right now, I think I'll just explain it right now, might as well since I'm already here. It's going to be 7 parts. These are the parts that are going to be in it. I'll come back to it a little bit later in this video. I've planned out part 1. I've also created a part 0 that I'm going to show you guys in a little bit. And I've created or planned out at least the first part of part 2. And I'm just going to be hard at work trying to finish part 2 as things get started. So anyway, so more information on this later in this video. But yeah, by being able to engage with that material, by coming back to it over and over again, by being able to access it anytime, by being able to get feedback anytime, that's going to lead to much deeper understanding. And then the lifetime doesn't need to be used for learning things that can easily be pre-recorded, answered asynchronously, etc. So yeah, hope that makes some sense. So it's way better than even at the college level that you're just studying for a test, you take the test, and then the course is over, right? So anyway, going back to our regularly scheduled program, I think I got through everything here. So, all right. Now, super briefly, some of these points over here. Maybe I'll go to instrument first. Sometimes people ask me what type of instrument they should get on a potential call with me. So I'll just say briefly, even though a lot of the time we hear the term digital piano, I consider a keyboard to be anything that runs on electricity, doesn't have strings. Piano to be anything that doesn't run on electricity, actually has strings. Sometimes we have hybrid pianos as well too that are both electric and acoustic, and that's interesting. I haven't played on many hybrids before, to be honest. But anyway, so we want an 88 key fully weighted keyboard with 3 pedals. We want the work to actually transfer over to a real acoustic piano. We don't want that work to be in vain. The right pedal is a sustain pedal, prevents the dampers from coming down. It keeps the sound going when the fingers are no longer holding the keys, basically. Now the left pedal, it's also called the una corda, and even adults who've played for 5-10 years as kids, they say they've never used the left foot in piano playing in their lives. On a real piano, the left pedal moves the entire action over, so the hammer strikes one less string. It changes the actual timbre, not just the volume. The change in sound is often described as darker and softer, like a painter's blues and greens. It's basically very important, one of our only means of changing the timbre independent of the volume, like the wave shape. And you won't find a really good pianist that does not use the left pedal, of course. So it's very important. Sometimes there may be universal or model-specific 3-pedal attachments, but not always. Typically, I recommend ordering from Amazon just because they're quite reliable. And Donner DDP90, if you're more on a budget-ish. Kawaii CA49. Actually, I have 3 of these. I still have my Kawaii CA200, the older version of the CA49. It still works great. I would practice on it for several hours before going to Manhattan School of Music to practice because the practice rooms were too competitive. There was a limit to the number of hours you could book. It's a great keyboard if you can't get a piano. And if you're considering getting a real piano, I recommend a new Boston Upright from Steinway. Could be quite pricey though. I have a Boston Baby Grand and Boston Upright from Steinway. So just some thoughts there. And some quick thoughts on virtual lessons. Because this mastermind is going to be completely virtual, I am no longer going to be teaching in-person lessons at all. I'm retiring from in-person lessons completely. I'm retiring from teaching the strategic teams completely. The only other thing that I'm doing for now is private lessons on a very limited basis. So everything's virtual. And sometimes people are skeptical or hesitant initially. So I want to say I did become nationally in demand through my virtual lessons once the pandemic started, right? That's how things became, that's how things really blew up, really. Most of the many reviews you see online are from virtual students. Most of my current students are taking virtual lessons. I'm confident they're just as strong as in person. There are even plenty of students in Brooklyn, believe it or not, I've never even met, that have just preferred to stay virtual. So a lot of people, even if they're originally skeptical or hesitant, they'd always been looking for in-person, they quickly find virtual is not only just as effective, it's also much more convenient and flexible. You wouldn't believe the number of times that on the day of, students have switched to virtual because work is running late or because they got caught up in something. Something came up at home. Nobody ever switches from virtual to in-person on the day of. Nobody. Because it's so much more convenient. And modern technology has made it such that the same auditory visual information can be easily transferred between phones, tablets, computers, etc. As long as the same information is transferred, obviously I can give feedback just as good. The student can reap the same benefits. They're just as effective. The comments for even the highest levels of musicality and technique. And just propping your phone at the side of the piano without any sort of fancy setup is sufficient a good amount of the time. I rarely demonstrate in terms of how I understand desirable difficulty, unless I think it will help the students' learning. As a result, believe it or not, I'm sitting pretty much like this the majority of the time. Having the students find notes themselves, identify where they are in the music themselves is way better for deeper learning, long-term learning, like I explained earlier. And students aren't doing independent practice much of the time because we know how beneficial delayed feedback is. There will be even more of this in the collective with way more opportunity for delayed feedback throughout the week. That independent practice with the delayed feedback is so powerful because of what I'd explained earlier, right? You allow people to fail, and then you fill in the gaps. You assess their strengths and weaknesses over and over again. And strategy, logic, science, etc., they hold true pretty much no matter what. And I save digital copies of people's music. You saw those earlier when I screen mirrored the screen from my iPod Pro. Very easy to send markings back and forth live during sessions using iMessage or email. Much more visual and much neater than traditional means, honestly. And we'll now be able to easily post in the community as well, too. So anyway, so I know that we're pretty far into this video now, but I just want to explain briefly here these 3 common pitfalls of adult students. And these are just 3 of the things that can come up. So one is not understanding desirable difficulty. And I should say, so this is what causes people to fail. I'm working exclusively with adult students at this point. No children, no teenagers. And specifically for adults, what causes them to just not succeed, to not get to where they want to be. So don't do these things. So one of the things is not understanding desirable difficulty. We live in the age of the quick fix, same day prime delivery, 15-second TikTok clips, etc. People are too used to instant gratification. To do something really well, it takes time. Even in these greatly accelerated lessons, you won't learn your goal piece in a day, right? This isn't learn 100 pop songs in 30 days. We don't care about low quality things that are done that quickly. When people first join, they may feel out of their comfort zone. It may be the case even in private lessons because we have some really out there thinking here. It could be the case in the strategic teams. I'm sure it may be the case when people first join Pianist Collective. And the practice methods are actually making things harder than they initially were, right? Starting from different areas, adding in reverse. You might feel some resistance. You might feel out of your element, uncomfortable. But it's like going to the gym, lifting a weight and thinking like, it's just kind of hard. I think I'm going to come back here. And which is silly, of course. And rapidly acquiring independence, it does feel like these things. You want to get out of your comfort zone because it means you're growing. It's a normal and healthy thing to be getting out of that comfort zone and acquiring independence. Another thing is not being open to new ideas. Had some really unusual cases where people got these incredible results, memorizing a piece in multiple pages, only 3 or 4 lessons. And there were a few times when they quit right away after that. They thought they weren't getting their money's worth because it wasn't giving them enough real-time instruction. They were doing a lot of independent practice within the teams. They had no frame of reference because they hadn't taken lessons before. What they didn't realize was the thing they perceived to have more value, real-time instruction, it doesn't have any value in and of itself. Like there's nothing inherently more valuable about that. It does have a specific feel though. So the amazing result they received was the result of decisions I'd made and instructions I'd given with very little real-time instruction needed, and it produced an amazing result. It actually would have hurt to give more real-time instruction, even though it probably would have felt better. And we could have chosen an even far more ambitious piece, brought them to a truly completely different level after 6 to 12 months. And it was just like an opportunity lost, but that's okay. It just goes to show that even when amazing results are staring you in the face, you won't recognize them unless you're open to new ideas and a completely different way of doing things. I'll mention this again later. To get abnormal results, you need abnormal thinking. And finally, being out of touch with your life piano balance. Likely the number one killer of adult students other than possibly financial instability. So the typical story, somebody starts and is very enthusiastic. They're practicing 30 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, whatever's normal for them. Then they encounter a busy time with a lot of meetings, clients, projects, moving, changing jobs, family things, longer work hours. They think, I'd better pause lessons for now until things aren't so crazy. I'll start up again once things settle down. Once I started specializing in adults, I naively thought these students will return. It turns out that they pretty much will never return. Of course, sometimes people aren't being totally honest, but many times they really do want to return. So why does this happen? They think that they'll, wait until things settle down, then they'll come back and it doesn't happen. It's really a matter of solving a logic puzzle. Once you decide life's better with piano in it than out of it, it's better to have a teacher than be on my own because I need expert guidance. I don't know what I'm doing on my own. It's better to join the collective than take traditional lessons because of all these reasons that we've talked about. The rapid acquisition of independence, the learning of desirable difficulty, all of those things. It's a matter of solving your life piano puzzle. The perceptive students will realize, wait a second, this stuff happens every few months or this will happen every year. And it could be that there are predictable busy seasons. It could be that it's just life and that just happens to us every now and then for a certain stretch of time. Or it could be that your life actually even is that way. It's just that busy. That's just the nature of your life. So if the student desires, they can certainly receive more coaching around how to practice more consistently, how to achieve a better piano life balance and so on. But whatever the situation is, students are with me because they're using whatever time they have the best that they can, playing the piano the best they can with the time that they have. We're learning that maximum efficiency, quality, independence, even if you have only a tiny bit of time. There are plenty that have extremely demanding careers. They can't practice as much as the others. There are students that are only practicing pretty much within the sessions themselves, believe it or not. And it surely, for them, you would think, oh, that's probably not worth it. But for those students, it's worth it because by investing that relatively small amount of time each week, that accountable time, they can still make abnormal progress and eventually play the gold piece they've always wanted to play. Now, they would advance even better if they practiced, of course. But this is probably the only studio where you can sort of be lazy and not really practice and still get results better than another studio where if you actually devoted all your time and energy, you wouldn't achieve results as good as here. No exaggeration because of all the methods and strategies and mindsets I've talked about. And then, of course, if things get better in the future, of course, we can talk about it and then get even greater results then. So the people that become lifelong learners, they see their patterns of existence. They continue playing piano through the tricky times. They realize the good times will come around again. Those that recognize that's just the way their life actually is, they want to continue playing the piano, and they realize they still want to continue playing, using the time they have the best that they can. So they might just come to that realization and come to terms. And the collective will make it way easier to continue to make progress and get value, even if your schedule is super busy and unpredictable. So, and we'll go into how that is, of course, in a little bit. Ultimately, adult students are only accountable to themselves. They don't have mom or dad hanging over them saying, don't give up so easily. It's up to them to not throw in the towel just because it's a little out of their comfort zone. They had pre-existing assumptions. They're not getting instantaneous results, or things have become busy or hard. I want my adult students to succeed. So that's why I say all these things. I see it over and over again. I'm not worried about whether the methodologies will work. Learning style is irrelevant, believe it or not, because of all the research that I've just talked about here. Even if somebody thinks, oh, but maybe this won't work for me. It will work as long as we are sensitive and we go about things in the right way. Logic and science will work for everybody. 90% of my work is really around mindset, making my students stronger people so they can actually stick around to get the results that they would be so thrilled to attain. And that's why I spent all this time explaining this stuff. And the mindset training in the course, it goes way deeper than this. Part 1, vision and mindset, it gets pretty out there. I don't know that there's another piano training that really goes into rebuild. I'm talking about the really deep stuff, like your beliefs about the world, your beliefs about kind of how life is in general, your beliefs about yourself in general. I'm this sort of person. This is just the way that I am. It doesn't have to be that way. You can fundamentally change yourself from the ground up. You can completely restructure yourself and your way of being into the type of person that can progress extremely rapidly at the piano. So it does get pretty out there. It is all the crazy stuff that I've learned the last few years to bring my studio and business to this very unusual format and condition that it's in right now. So I'm going to share all of these secret insights for you, because I think I'm a completely different person than I was even a few years ago. Even like last year, really, I've just been continuously evolving, and I want to teach all my students how to do that as well too. That's the reason why we have this really unusual part that'll just go super deep. How do you actually change your existing realities and everything? So anyway, so I know that this was a lot of information. I know that I've been going at it for almost an hour here, but really, I think all of this will give the context that we need in terms of the collective itself overall. So have this all the way in the little corner here. So if you've been listening up to this point, you have a lot of patience, you're very detail oriented, you're probably very interested in everything that I have to say here in terms of learning. So all these things interrelate. I think that part of the reason I've gone so deep also is that you see, like, this is the type of thing that the course will be. This is how detailed it will eventually be. This is the type of detail we'll go into when answering questions, when collaborating together. This is the type of strategic thinking that we're doing. This is the type of extremely unusual mindset that we're following. And we have complicated thoughts and reasonings to hopefully elegantly and eloquently explain concepts in an easy to understand way, right? So that we have that paradox that we're resolving there. So all of this will probably allow you to much better understand the collective and what exactly it is. So let's see if I can even just get there overall. So the collective itself. So my dilemma and the problem with courses, so this was the question I had to grapple with, having thought through all that other stuff. The market was totally oversaturated with courses. They often don't deliver a transformational result, the courses. Even if the person teaching it was a celebrity, even if they're a world-class pianist, doesn't cause you to achieve in 6 to 12 months what typically takes 3 to 5 years to achieve. I would probably have had the same problem if I decided to do the same thing with a normal course. There's still some amount of feedback that's needed. The course just can't run completely on its own. It has to be extremely high quality feedback, just like it's been in my private lessons and strategic teams up to this point. Other piano apps and courses are on the market. Honestly, nothing that delivers anywhere near the result of my lessons, private lessons, or strategic teams. I know that that's kind of a bold thing to say, but I mean, simply piano, synesthesia, like all those types of things, students come to me when they've sort of run out of things to do. There's obviously really great traditional teachers out there as well, but specifically for the adult amateur, for piano teachers, all those factors I talked about, you can think about how powerful it is if we actually apply these concepts, and many people aren't even aware of them. And there are other choruses and everything out there, but from what I've seen, the playing it's not really high-level classical playing. It's more like, let's just play these pop pieces and plunk out these chords. So anyway, I thought this might not have very much to do with my current studio. Like any kind of idea with courses, masterminds, and it might even take years to start. And there were signs within my teams that pointed to something beyond them. I mean, I would go around in a circle, right? Because remember, people are practicing on their own, and then I would ask them, do you have any questions? Do you have any questions? Right? So this was the asynchronous feedback. I would go around and ask people if questions had come up. And sometimes they didn't have questions. Sometimes they would have a lot of questions. Other times they were just advancing well. They were just continuing to carry things out. So they didn't really have that many questions. And the amount of real-time instruction needed for amazing progress week to week was surprisingly small. I hopped on one-on-one calls with all of my current students, and the feedback I received was just that little bit of instruction. It was already more than enough. People were very happy with that amount of instruction. Sometimes people were tired, busy. Everybody's busy. Everybody has busy schedules. Sometimes people craved more flexibility because of those schedules. They didn't always need to be there for the entire 90-minute or 2-hour session. Sometimes it would be helpful to receive more comments during the rest of the week, but people were respectful of my time. They weren't sending me questions outside of the sessions. And and whenever anybody joined my studio, I'd have to give the same speeches and monologues about my methodologies, many musical and technical concepts over and over again. So many things, because you could see how incredibly detail-oriented I am, can be pre-recorded. And performance would take a significant part of the session time, especially if they had longer pieces or there were more students. No performance opportunities outside of the sessions. There wasn't that much interaction between students in the sessions, because the more interaction there is between them, the less time they'd have for their individual pieces. And not really any community or making of friends outside of the sessions at all. So even within the teams, the great program that it is, we had all these things, and I had an epiphany during last summer. After investing heavily into the business and mindset-related things and thinking about it for a long time, I realized I wanted to create a mastermind. I have the client base right here already. These are the people that are serious, and I can create it within 1 year. And you might be wondering, what the heck is a mastermind? What is the difference between a course and a mastermind? So a course, it may have thousands or even tens of thousands of members. It may have communities and calls as well, but the course itself is the main thing, of course. That's why it is a course. You independently execute on the course. You're doing it on your own. You can go and seek help occasionally from the community and calls, but really you're trying to go back to the course and independently execute. Anyone can purchase the course typically and become a part of the course community. I mean, you might even be able to purchase it through some page and just click a link and then use your credit card. So it's not very hard to get in. A mastermind, if there is a course, it's just a component of the whole. It is no longer the main thing. A mastermind is built on the strength of its members. So the stronger its members, the stronger the community and the collaboration between the members, and the better the mastermind. So at this price point, honestly, the members, everybody's smart, everybody's successful in their fields, everybody loves the piano, or the idea of playing the piano if they haven't started yet. Everybody's really friendly and easy to get along with. They're seeking out instruction and results of the very highest quality. They're highly unusual people in the best way possible. And I'm really completely transparent when people text me. I set all my pricing expectations up front. I'll do the same thing if people reach out to me as a result of this video. I'm trying to scare people away if we're not going to be a good fit. I don't want to waste the potential students' time either. And the reason you might wonder, like, how do we know that they're friendly and stuff? Well, I've personally interviewed in every single student. They might be short calls, but they can also easily be 90 minutes or more if necessary. I don't care how much time it takes as long as the potential student is serious. I'm willing to invest this time to see if they're an ideal fit. A mastermind will typically have much fewer members because of how selective the membership is, and that definitely is the case here. And all of the above, it's basically the lowest standard of person that's in this mastermind. Like, these are the people that'll be answering questions, interacting with you, etc. The course technically doesn't even need to exist at all. The focus is really on collaboration and feedback within a mastermind, right? So the better the people, the better the mastermind. And in terms of the course, like I was saying earlier, we do have a course. In fact, even though I just said we don't even need one, it was supposed to be just a small course, and it was supposed to be a departure from the courses of old, those huge, massive courses. But like I said, maybe because I'm slightly crazy, it's still going to be huge. It's 7 different parts. I've already told you I've done some of the first part, the vision and mindset part. The second part, the musicality and all this part, I'm going to be talking about much more. And it's not going to be completed, that second part. Like I said, I'm going to continue to work on it. It's turned it into sort of like writing a novel. But I want to trust my unique vision for what a course can be, because I've trusted myself up to this point, so I'm going to continue to do that. I'm not going to compromise the vision here. I'm extremely detail-oriented. There'll be long, extensive modules similar to what you're experiencing right now. So again, this is a very fair sample. You can say the course is derived from the calls and live interactions. Where I would normally give a 20-minute explanation, that'll be in the course. I'll be like, okay, I'm about to go off on a 20-minute explanation, except I don't have to because it's in the course. If I give like a 10-hour-long explanation over the course of months or years, but with some gaps in the full explanation, depending on that student, I can now record the whole unfiltered, complete thing. Never before possible. Even in private, that wasn't really, really possible. That is organized neatly and can be accessed anytime. So you can finally refer to that full version. And humans are much more forgetful creatures than you think. We need so much spaced repetition before information really sinks in. I had a mentor say you need to listen to the same material at least 10 times before it really becomes a part of you. I totally believe this. I'm sure it's more. Hardly anyone records lessons. Now everything will be organized in one place. Every time you re-listen, the concepts will sink in deeper and deeper, providing more value than literally practicing or asking questions. Because if you can internalize a concept that fundamentally changes your playing, it can do more to just listen to the course than hours and hours of practice. Truly. So this will be a collaborative effort between me and the students. It'd be like, what do you guys want to see in the performance part? What questions do you have about playing from memory, about playing difficult pieces, about maybe fingering, or about pedaling, or anything? The answers to these questions, the back and forth, that'll help to create the course modules over time. And it'll just take however long it takes. There will be content drops and things on a regular basis. Now, collaboration calls. Private lessons are typically 30 to 60 minutes once a week. The strategic team sessions I taught were 90-minute or 2-hour sessions once a week because the delayed feedback, like I said earlier, for independent practice, it's so powerful. Now, students can attend as much or as little of 4 hours a week of live collaboration calls as they like via Zoom. This is the schedule. U.S. Eastern Time, Sundays 1 to 3, Wednesdays 8 to 10 at night because adults have late meetings and stuff. Alternating, Saturdays 1 to 3, Tuesdays 6 to 8. You can show up late or leave early if you like. You can stay for however long you like. You can stay the whole time. You can have your cameras on or off. You can practice independently or interact with everyone else. So it's much more open, much more flexible. Now, this is a really important one. Pianist Collective versus other masterminds, other courses, and so on. So, in case you're thinking to yourself, I've heard something like this before, I kind of mentioned this earlier in this video, in terms of other communities, courses, apps. I'm here to tell you why that's not the case. Even if they have tons of features, teachers, members, lessons, etc., it's because of the way that I've mapped the evolution of private to strategic teams or group lessons to mastermind, in this case, Pianist Collective. So my private lessons, they were already really unusual because they incorporated all the strategies and methodologies that I've been talking about for the last hour, right? So when transitioning to the teams, I took everything that worked very well in the private lessons and kept it. The methodologies, the demand for quality, etc. And I added what was originally lacking within traditional private lessons. The independent practice, more performance opportunity, more community, without sacrificing anything from the original format, right? So I added all these things, and it made things better because people are performing, because people are independently practicing, getting that asynchronous feedback, having more community, etc. So what made my teams a premium group program that gets students amazing results compared to just a regular old group program? Those unique methodologies, strategies, mindsets, etc. It's a different way of thinking for everyone else, and extremely specific directions were used. Notational system, I showed you a little bit of that earlier. Systems and processes that make communication of very complex things almost instantaneous, right? So a student brings in something, and then immediately I know everything they practiced because of the notations that they've made, right? I can just understand everything they're doing immediately. That's what allowed for high-level students to be here, so there didn't need to be so much back and forth. And unique vision, everything I've just been lecturing about, this super long video, the independence, the training of strategists, etc. So all that, and then just the old school demand for the highest quality. Like, it doesn't matter about all these fancy strategies if it isn't good. We want quality. We want tiny sections that are excellent. And we don't compromise the quality, because if you have tiny sections that are kind of okay, when you link them together, it's going to be even worse. But if we have excellent, incredible quality in your sections, when you link them together, those puzzle pieces will come together, and we can create something amazing in terms of both hands coordinations, larger sections. And I've just put in more work, more care than anyone in this particular space in terms of how much I practiced, how much I researched, how much I used in all of my teaching, all the thinking I've done in terms of the business, in terms of the vision for what the collective can be. I at least know that I've just practiced and thought about all this more than anybody else in terms of my views on strategy and mindset. So just like I mapped super high quality private lessons to the teams, so they didn't lose their quality when we transitioned from private into a group format, I'm doing the same thing to the collective. Everything that makes the teams generate amazing results now, the collective will do even better. Everything the teams might be missing now, not that there's anything about them that I've gotten amazing results for the past year and a half, but anything that might be the case, the collective will have. And it's the natural evolution of our ideals of maximum efficiency, quality, and independence. People are going to be even more independent, of course. They're going to advance even faster because they have more resources. And because of that, they'll have greater quality. So it's really for exactly the same reasons that this is a premium program as opposed to a regular piano app, course community, etc., except even more so on all fronts, because I've worked really hard on this and my views have evolved and the methodologies are even way more refined. My views on strategy and mindset are way deeper than before. In terms of like fundamentally changing our realities, I never talked about that like 3-4 years ago. And that's going to be included. The degree of specificity that we're going to and how developed all the principles of the methodology are, they're just at a completely different level, even from 3 or 4 years ago. And even from a year or two ago. The demand for quality is going to be even more so, I would say, because I'm always trying to improve as a musician. And I've just put in so much more work the last, year and a half, or, however long exactly it's been since the team started. It's been like almost a year and a half now. So we'll continue to fulfill our baseline promise of achieving in 6 to 12 months what typically takes 3 to 5+ years. I even thought of writing that we might be able to achieve what normally takes 4 to 6 years, but I didn't want it to become too confusing. At the very least, I can say that students will be advancing even much faster than they would have within my teams because of the reasons that I'm going to explain in a little bit. So other course communities, etc., they may have tons of lessons, features, but they weren't mapped this way. Like from excellent private lessons to the strategic teams or other group format, how do you keep the quality, not only keep it, but make it even better? And then from the teams to the mastermind, how do you not only keep the quality, but make things even better, account for all the weaknesses and so on. They didn't take the time to map things this way. They don't have the crucial weapons that make these results possible, these views on strategy and mindset. So the following sections describe in detail how I've mapped the teams to the collective. So the first one is practicing. This is the easiest thing probably. Accountable practice is something that many students find valuable. Private lessons really don't have any. The strategic teams, people aren't watching you practice so much during private lessons, maybe very small amounts. At least in the private lessons that I teach, the very small amount that I teach, we will have tiny amounts of accountable practice, but most private lessons don't have any at all. They don't have that delayed feedback. The teams, they have accountable practice during that 1 90-minute or 2-hour block each week, which is pretty good. But in the collective, it's going to be better because you can show up to as much or as little of the 4 hours a week as you like for accountable practice. You'll likely be able to see other people practicing along with you in the gallery view of the main call, which hopefully will be motivating, and you can begin participating at any time if you have questions. And let's see here. So that's for practicing. Just show up and just practice. Leave your camera on so everybody can see you. And you have more opportunity to practice now because there are 4 hours that are offered each week, and it's more flexible. So then we have performing. Kind of talked about this a little earlier. While performance isn't mandatory, it is independently one of the greatest accelerators of progress. Like I talked about, the ability to play for anyone, anywhere, anytime, under any conditions. If someone says, hey, you play piano, right? Can you play us something? You encounter a piano at someone's house, you encounter public piano, can you just sit down and play beautiful music? A stronger performer at a lower pianistic level, they're not even as good at piano in general, they'll sound better than a weaker performer at a higher pianistic level because the latter person, they're not so good at faking and going on. They don't understand prioritization and being able to just go on no matter what. Some students are kind of neutral about performance. They don't have any interest, perhaps. Maybe they're even negative about it. But even if you're a hermit that only plays for yourself, performance is still that 30,000-foot view, the opposite of the nitty-gritty detail. Like I said, it teaches all these things, going onward no matter what, keeping the big picture in mind, and practicing not judging yourself, practicing not putting yourself down, cursing, laughing at yourself, getting depressed, all these things. It allows you to keep the big picture in mind and get all the way through to the end. And this way other people are able to enjoy your music and you keep your demeanor even when little things happen. Because even if you play perfectly, if you react to things, if you immediately start saying, I didn't think I played that well, I'm not really ready to play, people aren't going to be able to enjoy that. And it's going to feel not nearly as, they won't be able to relate to the music as much because there's too much you involved, right? Too much ego involved. So if you practice performance, you'll be able to sit down and play for yourself far more enjoyably and with far less judgment if you become a stronger performer, and other people will be able to enjoy way more if you want to play for them. Private lessons, of course, have a lot less performance when there aren't upcoming recitals. The teams, there was the chance to perform for others each week, but only within those sessions themselves. Now in this, you'd be encouraged to find an accountability partner or practice partner that you can hop on a call with and trade performances with weekly. So anytime, you can reach out to multiple people. Let's see here, this is a typo. You can reach out to multiple people as often as you like, perhaps. And when recitals are coming up, I will list all of the performers, and those students should be ready for anybody to reach out anytime to listen to them. So they can also contact each other and perform extensively for one another in pairs, small groups, large groups. So it's done outside of the 4 hours of collaboration calls that are offered each week. And I'll show you this in the community in a little bit. But basically, outside of those 4 hours, it'll be so easy to just perform for others, listen to others, hop on a call with them anytime. And if people are in the city, in New York City, they could even meet up in person if they wanted to, even though that's not a core part of the collective, but it's very easy to do. If you're in another city, hopefully more people will join over time. Anyway, so some people will think it's very convenient. They can perform outside of the sessions. Others, maybe you don't want it. Maybe you think it's a hassle. So if you want to perform for another person, you just want to show up to the calls, easily you can do that. You can just go into one of the breakout rooms in Zoom with one or more other people. You can do this on your own, or I can help you. And when you're finished performing for each other, giving each other comments, you can then rejoin the main call. And I won't be the center of attention anymore. I won't be like the star in the center of everything. So people can actually relax and talk to each other and give each other comments without my constant interference. And if you want to play for me personally and the whole collective, you can do that on the main call as well. And then we can all give comments, discuss, and collaborate together, which should hopefully be a lot of fun. Now, the community, the most important part, really. Having a supportive community of others like you is extremely powerful for progress and motivation. Not everybody has to make friends and be a social butterfly, but the option's there if you want it. When you're not in music school, there's no community that really exists in the context of private lessons. The teams are a lot better, but the interaction is somewhat limited in the sessions, and also there's no interaction between students outside of the sessions at all. So our community will be hosted on School, platform completely separate from Facebook groups, away from all the noise and distraction. I'm going to show you guys all this stuff as we get near the end of this video. You'll be uploading unlisted YouTube videos for now, because School is a new platform. However, native videos on their roadmap for 2023. And by the way, the iOS app just came out at the time of this video, and the Android app should be out in about a month or so. Probably by the time you see this, everything will already be out. Membership is private. You won't see feeds from other people, groups, ads, etc. You can ask questions and post videos or practicing 24/7. Have them answered by the community here during the week. And this is so powerful because now that I've set up systems that basically you're just getting comments asynchronously, right? You're doing something on your own, then I'm checking on you and giving you comments. You're maybe writing fingering on your own, then I'm checking on that and giving you comments. Well, now you can get comments anytime. I won't literally be responding anytime. I need to batch the work and set limits, because otherwise with my personality, I really will be responding all the time. But I just mean to say that now you can post things and you can get them answered outside of the sessions. And with more asynchronous feedback, the results will be even stronger. Now, you might say there are free Facebook groups, Reddit forums where you can post the questions. But again, the quality of the person is going to be very low. Or not again, but you may have guessed, because in the beginning or earlier on, I said the quality of people in this mastermind will be very high. Comparatively, the quality of people in other groups is going to be very low, because anybody can get into them. A lot of the answers are going to be incomplete, questionable, or just plain wrong. There may be teachers on there, but they won't know anything about strategy or mindset. My students, know way more now than just about any other teacher out there that you can find. Or maybe not, well, at least from some of the information that I've given, you know a lot more, at least about some things, than a lot of teachers out there already. So just imagine how much you'll know, even if you study with me for a little while. And within the collective, though, people will know all this information. Like I said, the quality of members will be higher than any other online piano community out there. The caliber of person is extremely high because of how selective I am, how passionate I am about creating the best possible culture. I'd rather have just 5 members and not have anybody else come in if that will prevent me from sacrificing quality. I care about quality of piano playing and of the members themselves, because I want people to join a community that really is that good. So everyone will know my methodologies. Everyone will have access to my entire course. So even the beginner student will shortly know more about strategy and mindset than any other piano teacher out there, just about. The baseline level of knowledge of all these methods will become higher than it's ever been possible to have in the past, right? Because everybody have all this information. And for the first time, the number of people that understand all this stuff will be the largest ever, and that'll create many new opportunities for extremely rapid innovation. Because I was always innovating, trying on the students what I tried on myself, trying on myself what I tried on my students. But this is just going to accelerate and blow up if people are really contributing, which is really exciting, genuinely. Again, I can answer your questions anytime during the week. So many things can be answered asynchronously, whether through writing out questions, uploading a video, or both. writing of the fingering. I can write all the fingering of an entire piece, and then we can deduce if it's helpful for you to look at the answer key before you've tried it yourself in the future. What's this musical symbol? Can you listen to my 20-minute long video and give me musical, technical, and strategic comments? Yes. And can you just check in on how I'm doing with my piece? I don't know why this section is going so slowly. Can you just watch me practice this part to see if I'm on the right track in terms of my decisions? Right? So all these things and much more could be answered through asynchronous feedback as well too, right? So even for performance practice, you can on the honor system just record your first cold performance for the day, right? Don't warm up. That'll make you nervous. And I can still assess that asynchronously. So many detailed questions about music theory, performance practice, methodologies, musical expression. It'll eventually be in the course. And if they're not there yet, you can just ask anytime during the week in the community. I won't even have to personally answer all the questions in the future because more advanced students can answer them. Excellent training for them as well too. Different students will be strong in different areas. I also have those faculty members that I talked about earlier already. I think it'd be great to have a professional jazz pianist at some point. Hopefully that'll happen either this year or next year. Over time, part of my vision is to bring more teachers into the collective. So if you're a teacher right now, I'm looking for you. We're very happy to have you. In many ways, you have even more to gain from the platform because literally the entire platform is teaching training. It's me teaching everywhere, recorded, live, on the calls, in the community. And honestly, there's a lot that you can gain here business-wise as well too, because obviously this is like a really unusual thing to be doing. And different students will bring different things to the table. One student might have been able to learn scales abnormally quickly. One student started keeping track of their practice in a Google Doc in a very specific way. Develop some of their own notational system or strategy that works in tandem with my methods. A particularly good work-life balance as a software engineer. We have tons of those. They may be able to understand logical principles at a usually deep level. And they might have greater pre-existing knowledge of music theory or scales or whatever it might be. They might be good at playing Chopin. They might be especially good at dealing with performance anxiety. Maybe they're like some kind of social maven and they have really great ideas for meetups, ways that members can motivate one another and hold each other accountable. Maybe they're really, I have some students that are beginners and they can Google stuff and they can find just about anything. And a lot of people are very bad at this, how to be self-sufficient. They learn using synesthesia or simply piano. They acquired a unique skill set as a result. Everyone's able to contribute different things and we've become far stronger when we can bring all of these and many other types of people together. I am still a human, even though I'm maybe a weird one. I'm not immune to subconscious bias towards certain types of thinking. I'll tend to give certain comments in certain situations without being aware of it. But the more people that there are, the more different types of thinking that we have, the more fruitful the discussions and the collaboration, which is an awesome thing to have, right? So that's some of the community stuff. In terms of pedagogy training, teaching training that I was talking about earlier, it's really important to become the strongest possible teacher you can be. I mean, if you're literally a piano teacher, obviously that's important, but this is really in reference to non-teachers, right, which is the vast majority probably for right now. The better the teacher you are, the better the teacher you are of yourself. The better you are, the better the teacher you are of others and the mastermind, right? The better comments you can give others, the better the comments you can give to yourself, and the opposite as well. I don't need to create an entire part of the course for pedagogy training because the entire platform is teaching training. I mean, like I was saying earlier, everything is training. Everything is me teaching. The replies, the calls that are recorded and uploaded to the platform. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. All the calls will be recorded as well too. When you give comments to anybody, when you receive comments from me on your comments, that's teaching training. If you compare your comments with mine, that's teaching training. It'll be entirely made up of teachers, just like it's entirely made up of performers, the collective that is. These are the people that'll be answering questions in the community and collaborating along with you, right? Performer teachers, everybody a performer, everybody a teacher, to the extent that you feel comfortable. More information on how the calls themselves will actually work. So there likely will be a whole bunch of people practicing, some with cameras on, some with cameras off. If you have your camera on, there's more accountability. Everybody can see you practicing. there's no separation between performance and regular questions. So I'll just answer them in the order that they appear. If you want to perform for another human, you can just enter breakout rooms to perform, or by DMing them and then saying you'd like to, trade performances with them. I can help to facilitate this, or you can just join all on your own, like I said, right? You can just join the main call afterwards. And if you want to perform for everyone and receive comments from me, like I said, you can do that as well. And you can ask anything you would have originally asked in the strategic teams or in private lessons. I'll answer your question right there. Or I might say, oh, it'd actually be better if you work this out yourself first because of desirable difficulty. Or it might be better if you went to the course or something. But a lot of the time I'll answer your question right there. It might be like a masterclass with me coaching you directly, rapid back and forth instruction. Might include minute adjustments of technique or training your ear. It might include coaching along traditional lines, high level of technique and musicality. It might be coaching with my logical or physical methodologies, which I'll talk about. The physical one I'll talk about briefly in a little bit. Regardless of the level of the student, once the student's coached in more or less a real-time fashion or with only very slight delays in feedback, then the idea is that they'll apply that and do things on their own, right? Because of all the reasons you heard about earlier in this video. That'll give them much greater independence, even for very advanced students. If you're coached through X number of measures, try to execute whatever it is that we did entirely on your own with new material. Then upload videos of their practice, your process, or your results to the community when the calls aren't going on. Then get additional feedback if you need live. But if you start getting the same results entirely on your own, now you have the power to get those results, the ones you were originally relying on me for every moment of your own practice time. Like I explained earlier, a new level of independence, which, as we said, is very powerful because then we can focus on other things. And the question, it might also result in extensive collaboration between many members of the collective rather than just answers from me. These are the types of questions. How do you structure your practice time? Is it possible to progress if I'm really busy? Is it normal to feel like I'm not making progress? What's everyone playing? Like, so many people can answer this. It'll lead to way more of a fruitful discussion, way more nuanced and, lots of different viewpoints and angles than just me. And I encourage others to contribute when we're in the middle of answering someone's question or resolving someone's issue. You can type in the chat. Maybe we'll just have some people unmute. And I can also be checking in on students, seeing how they're doing, holding them accountable if that's what they want, checking in on their playing and so on. And if nobody has any questions, we'll just hang out and chat, which is something I'm looking forward to, like just enjoying each other's company. So, like I said, like hanging out with friends, except that we're going to get actual pianistic results. Now, recitals. There's going to be 2 online recitals and 1 in-person recital a year. That's what I'm currently doing. I'm planning on keeping that. Online recitals will be through Zoom, likely in June and December. In-person recital at a high-end venue in either Manhattan or Brooklyn, most likely. Probably in June, could vary depending on venue availability. We just performed at Steinway Hall in Midtown Manhattan again. At the time of this recording, we performed at the National Opera Center in Midtown Manhattan last year. I've had students fly in from Massachusetts, Florida, Georgia, Colorado, Arkansas, etc. to perform. And as the collective grows, other opportunities may be created, especially for more advanced students. It's never mandatory, but it's highly encouraged when students are ready, because it really will cause you to go to a different level. And there will be an ever-growing archive of searchable content. The course will continue to be added to and refined over time. All the collaboration calls will be recorded and uploaded to the community under a specific category. So don't worry about the opportunity cost if you don't attend every call. I would assume not many students will actually try to attend every single one. All of them will be recorded. So nothing will be lost there. If you're practicing on your own, you want to hear what we've been up to later, you can go ahead and watch it. There should be auto-generated transcripts from YouTube, hopefully, that will include when the calls are uploaded. And the entirety of school is searchable, and I'll show you that in a little bit. So if you search River Flows in You, you'll search the course, every collaboration call that's ever mentioned it, every post in the community that's ever mentioned River Flows in You. I'm sure I would have uploaded the complete fingering, probably sometime very soon. You'll be able to find that just by searching, not long after the collective starts. And we're starting to get to the end here. Let's see if I can find where I am. But what if there's not enough time during the collaboration call for my question to be answered? And as I mentioned earlier in this video, surprisingly, only a very small amount of real-time feedback is necessary for truly extraordinary progress, often once a week. This is already proven. We've already talked about it. They achieved their amazing results through that, executing mostly independent practice, receiving delayed feedback. Too much real-time feedback can hurt, like we explained earlier. People assume that the real-time feedback is more valuable, but we know, like I've said multiple times, because repetition is useful, like I said, that this is going to be much more powerful, the delayed feedback. And the abnormal results for abnormal thinking, I'm making decisions different from everyone else. You've seen all the examples. Obviously, I'm getting results different from everyone else because I'm thinking so differently. And so when people say, but David, I heard you're supposed to do this first, or, you know, I thought you were supposed to, well, I don't want to do the same thing as everyone else because then I'll get the same results. Now, the most obvious proof of this is the results, the reviews, hopefully you've seen online that I'll go over in a sec. And they've learned a piece in 6 to 12 months that normally would have taken them 3 to 5 years. And supposedly, such a high-level group program, the teams, it wasn't originally possible. And even these feats are huge understatements, because normally the results that students achieve in 6 to 12 months with me, they often would have never achieved ever at any point in their lives, because we're also getting to a certain raw quality in terms of musical expression. That would be difficult to achieve unless you're with a very good teacher. It certainly is possible, especially because adults are so busy. So we're able to achieve these results even when adults are super busy. And a lot of teachers are working mainly with kids. Plenty of students who study for 5 years, 10 years as kids, you can't even tell their ability isn't any different compared to someone who studied for 1 to 2 years because they didn't preserve quality and they didn't learn how to learn. So how do you measure the ability to perform under any conditions the student gains? How do you measure the learning to how to learn, how to think? That can be applied to any future piece or situation. How do you measure the level of independence and self-sufficiency that the students gained during this time, right? So it's really something even more valuable than you first think, hopefully, as a result of studying with me. So there should be ample time during the calls for all students to have their small amount of real-time interaction needed to make excellent progress. I'm sure everybody will be on the first few calls. They're curious, they want to see how things work, but people will start going into different patterns over time. They'll start to vastly differ from each other. Some people will show up, mute themselves, and just start practicing. Others will want to hang out with us, chat, learn from my teaching, just see what's happening. Some will attend once a week, some will attend a lot, some will barely be attending any calls, just getting all the value out of the community and watching the course. Some will be gone for shorter or longer periods of time, and then returning in full force after they're not as busy anymore. And there are so many other ways now to gain value through the course and community when you can't attend the calls, because there are all these other channels for feedback if you need additional follow-up or time, right? We can have the extended back and forth, text, pictures, videos, anything really during the week. I can write up longer responses, mark up longer responses in your sheet music, create longer videos whenever useful. It'll probably be beyond the scope of what you would have originally received live, even within regular lessons. And again, you can see how detailed it's possible for me to be. Not that it'll always be long, but when necessary, I will do it. Over time, the course will have long, unfiltered explanations, answers to your questions I wouldn't even have had the time to go into, like I said. And like I said, the platform's searchable. You'll see all my answers to other people's questions. Maybe your question's already been answered. You can see others for performance anytime during the week. You can ask questions of others all during the week. It's like the calls, community, and course are all already self-sufficient entities that also serve as powerful support for one another, counteracting any possible weaknesses that might emerge if there were only one thing on its own. So it's like the community could exist even on its own. The calls could exist even on their own. The course eventually, hopefully, could even exist on its own. Maybe it's a bit of a stretch, but for instance, we could have calls and community and no course at all, and that would already be strong enough. But I'm doing all these things to the extent that I am because I really want things to be even better than that. So we have all of that. So who am I looking for? I'm looking for somebody that wants to do this long term. And once in a while, someone will ask what I mean by this. I'll typically respond at least a year. Typically, people are planning to be with me for years with no stop date in mind. There's no contract or anything that you sign. We move forward on the good faith that you'll be joining for the long term. Somebody that's open-minded, open to unconventional ideas, willing to get out of your comfort zone. That has good energy where we naturally get along, we'll enrich each other's lives and the lives of everyone in the mastermind. Good-natured, nice, friendly, because we'll see each other probably like all the time. So this is very important. And we want good people to be added because all of us will feed off of each other's energy. And somebody that's serious. So what does serious mean? It doesn't mean you have to practice a certain number of minutes a day. We don't have auditions. You don't have to be at a certain level of playing. We don't have pre-screening recordings. So it means you're committed to the highest quality instruction. You're interested in getting the best results that you can with the time that you have, whether you have a lot of time each week or only like a very tiny bit of time. You're willing to invest in yourself and in the best possible instruction. And you're passionate about piano, often with one of the following backstories. You've always wanted to play, but never had the chance. You played in the past, you weren't in the right mindset, or it wasn't the right time. Maybe you weren't mature enough, or whatever it might have been. You played in the past, it's been 3, 5, 10, 20 plus years, and you're aching to get back into it. With the time that you have, you want to be the best at piano that you possibly can be. You've done all you can on your own or with another teacher, but just can't seem to get to the next level. So it doesn't have to, I mean, it's probably not all of these things, but it's likely one of them. Whatever your story, you love the piano, and it would be amazing to be able to just sit down and play beautiful music at the level you've always dreamed of. It goes for total beginners, intermediate, advanced, professional musicians. It's unlikely you know other people exactly like you in terms of your relationship with the piano. Even if they do, they aren't as serious as you are about receiving that best possible instruction. They're not as passionate about playing the best they can with the time that they have. And you're passionate about learning, about improving yourself, about evolving in general. So that's the type of person I'm looking for. And so now we've finally covered this entire mind map here. And going back to this document, I just want to speak briefly and just show you guys a few things real quick. So in terms of the course itself, I've already talked through the first 2 parts. I've talked through some of this. It's going to go into even way, way more detail than my YouTube videos, than the little sample I showed you. This physical methodology is really about how do you play pieces that are that fast, that are, that crazily difficult with that amount of accuracy? How do you control all dynamics, articulations, and all that physically? How do I get to that next level, right? How do you play advanced pieces as an intermediate student, virtuosic pieces as an advanced student, intermediate as a beginner student? So there's a very specific way that I cycle through metronome speeds, and I use altered rhythms, and there's a lot of other parameters. And this is the oldest of my methodologies. I'll show you all of my secrets to how I do the things the way that I do here. So if you haven't already, you can search on YouTube, David Chang music. You'll find me, I think, pretty quickly. David Chang, 100-piece challenge, David Chang music. And, you'll find me playing virtuosic pieces and so on. And if you want to know how I can do that, this is what I'm going to teach you. Mental, emotional, and logistical methods. Mental practicing, I talk about that on the YouTube channel as well, too. How do you imagine everything that you're playing? It really is the ultimate memory tool, because with mental practice really strong, you can start from anywhere in the music from memory. Seriously. Stronger than music theory, stronger than traditional analysis, separate hands practice, other things that teachers typically talk about. So, and it allows you to learn new music away from the piano. You can practice without the use of the instrument at all, just by using your imagination. And there are so many other benefits to this, right? You can practice, of course, like when you're at the airport, when you're traveling, and all of that. The emotional side, it's really about, it's in some ways it doesn't go quite as deep as this, but it's still very important, because the way that we practice anything, what we do over and over again, it will eventually become permanent. And that goes for our emotions. You can practice emotions logically as well too. And the logistical, this goes into the complete planning of musical detail, writing all of the fingering, planning out all of the louds and softs, the right louder than the left. Where are all the soft to louds, loud to softs? Where are all the pedal markings and everything? And this is a big part of what can make you get to the next level in terms of musical expression, which I also talk about over here in this part of the course as well too. This is like really deep performance training. Again, there's videos on YouTube about some of these concepts already, but I'm going to go way deeper as time goes on. How do you deal with performance anxiety? How do you, again, perform under any conditions for anyone, anytime, anywhere? I have played hundreds of outdoor pianos. I have played in the blazing heat, in the freezing cold. I've played with people that are crazy, screaming around me. I've played with like pianos with broken keys, missing pedals, or broken pedals, like anything that you can think of. I have done, in total darkness at 4 a.m. How do I do that? I mean, obviously I'll still make a mistake from time to time, but I'm remarkably consistent because of this training that I've put myself through. And not that everybody has to go that crazy, but I will teach you how can you perform really under any conditions so that if you encounter a piano, you can confidently sit down and play for anybody, anytime, right? And then top level strategy, how do you put all these things together into a cohesive whole? That's really, the 50,000 foot view or something. What's your daily routine for all of these things? How do you exist as this new person and musician that you've become? Like, that's what we're going to be talking about, right? And like I said, we have these 2 online recitals, 1 in-person recital each year. And then we have these collaboration, feedback, and constant performance opportunities that I've talked to you guys about. So we have the school community to collaborate with other members 24/7. You can also perform for each other and all of that stuff that I've explained. And there's these twice weekly 2-hour collaboration calls. So briefly, I want to say, in terms of results and everything, this is from my landing page. I mean, some of this, this person said he's one of the best teachers I've had in any subject ever, which is a pretty nice thing to say. This person said that I thought I wouldn't be able to play this until I'd taken lessons for 5+ years. And he was able to get me a third of the way through this piece in a month, which was much faster than I ever anticipated, right? This person said that in just 6 months that she achieved something that was more than in 10 years of playing as a child. And, there's a lot more reviews here and everything. So if you just search David Chang music on, just Google David Chang music, you'll find over 100 5-star reviews on Thumbtack, over 50, 60 something 5-star reviews on Google. You'll find me just all over the internet, basically. And you can read a lot of those reviews to see it. And there have been students that have told me things that aren't even in those reviews. I have a student who's an actor who said that he started adding in reverse and these other kind of memory-related techniques to memorize monologues for his auditions. I've had someone tell me that they used planting seeds, right, because we're wanting things to grow over time. We're trying to utilize long-term thinking and spaced repetition to help with his work and in many other aspects of his life. I had an adult student tell me that lessons with me were the best investment that he has ever made in his adult life. And I had a student who is 73, and she said that she's never met a teacher that was better than me, apparently, in our lessons, as a result of experiencing the lessons with me. So, so I'm humbled by the praise, but, people have been getting genuine results, and it didn't make any difference when we transitioned from private lessons into strategic teams. And I have students who they've been playing for 4 months or 6 months from total beginner that performed at Steinway Hall in Midtown Manhattan about 2 weeks ago, right? That's not an unusual thing, with full musical expression and everything. So truly something they wouldn't have achieved for, 4 or 5 years easily otherwise. And in terms of our platform, I've been working on this already. So this is Pianist Collective. This is School, the platform that we'll be using. So this is what our community is going to look like. It's just me right now. It's kind of lonely. You can see it's very easy to post multiple file types and everything. These videos will start playing if you click on them. There are links to YouTube videos and so on. You can filter by category. People are looking for an accountability partner, whatever it is you want to do. You can type something and then, it'll be in this category. So you can find people, and I've tried to set it up so that it's very easy to find people to perform for, to listen to, and all of that. So just made that very easy to do. And one of the best things about this platform is that it's so easy to navigate. We don't have like Kajabi cores here and like Facebook groups over there. Everything's right here. This is the community. This is the classroom. So this is part 0, the part that I didn't even talk about. But these videos are at least shorter than this one. It'll explain to you how do you get things technically set up and all that, right? And it'll just start playing if you click on one of the as well. So it's very, very easy to navigate. I even created this one recently in terms of how do you get accountability within this format, because some people express like, there's like so many options. How do I still hold myself accountable, or how will you hold me accountable? I designed this. It explains a huge number of ways you can hold yourself accountable, even better than any other format that I've taught before. These are instructions for how to perform for and listen to others. How do you do the stuff that we just talked about earlier and easily find people to trade performances with anytime, right? How Pianist Collective works, everything's here. And again, like I said, the whole platform's searchable. So if I search like collaboration, it will search the whole community. And right, so any post that I have in the future, there will be collaboration call recordings, and so it'll search those as well, the past calls that have happened, and it'll search the classroom as well, right? You see all the course modules. So it'll search the course modules, it'll search the community, everything simultaneously. And finally, we have the calls themselves. It says it's happening in 44 days because right now I'm recording this like middle-ish of May. In the future, it'll say in 3 days or something like that. And if you click calendar here, in your local time, it will tell you when the upcoming calls are. And you can click them. You can add them to your calendars. You can decide to add them as recurring events if you want, once you click that. So it makes it very easy to to do any of these things, because community is right here. The course, the classroom is right here. The calls, the calendar is right here. It's very easy to search. So just everything's in one place. Everything's extremely easy to use. And we're just going to be collaborating and just creating wonderful stuff together here. So anyway, I know that this whole video was like this huge, big adventure. I wanted to make this an hour and a half. It's turned out to be even longer, but I think it gives you a really accurate picture. Like, this is all the things that I would say on the calls. The pre-recorded videos I would send, all the explanation about the collective, except obviously even much more so since this is the actual launch. And I hope that you genuinely got, how does all this work? How do I get these amazing results? Why is this different from everything else out there? How do I fundamentally change myself from the ground up, right? I feel like I've covered all of these things. So if this seems like something for you, if you're a serious adult amateur, if you are a piano teacher, especially if you watched this entire video, anybody that watched this entire video from beginning to end is probably highly suitable to join the collective. Now, if you skipped around, that doesn't mean that you're not suitable. Also, if you're one of my current students and you skipped the beginning, because I already said all those things to you, totally reasonable. But, if all this resonated with you, if you think like this is something that's really for me, I want to do this long term. I want to be part of this extremely selective group of people, right? A mastermind committed to the highest quality members, not just adult learners, but serious adult learners. And we want to advance through strategy and mindset. We want to hang out together and genuinely have fun. We want to build something that's never existed in this industry before and get really, really good at the piano all together. Then reach out to me. Text me. This is my cell phone number. I'll probably respond very quickly to set up an interview with me. And even though I'm recording this right now in the middle of May 2022, I mean, I'm going to put this on YouTube. I'm going to send this to like every single person that reaches out to me. And, you know, it's actually going to be a part of the core training itself. You're probably watching it like in the actual collective right now. So, you know, so all this is really important. You should keep coming back to this material again and again after you join as well too, hopefully. So I really look forward to hearing from you. Text me at my phone number that's listed here, and let's just get started together and choose a goal piece together. Looking forward to taking you to exactly where you want to be. Talk soon.